Coming up on today's edition of the Art Marketing Podcast, we're talking about how many customers did you acquire last year? Might just be the most important question I could ask. All right. Number one, programming note at the top. Shout out to Chris, who has been harassing me on Instagram to release more podcast episodes. Chris, I really appreciate the encouragement. I told you they would be coming soon. But I want to set the stage on where this particular rant is coming from. And for those who just listen to the podcast or not customers or whatever, art storefronts, our business has been at this for almost like a decade now, rounding up a little bit, but a decade sounds better. And we've got a little bit over 8,000 customers, and a good clip of which have been with us for like 5+ years. And, you know, we study very closely the most successful ones, the ones that stick out about all the others. And we look at them and it's like, well, what are these folks doing differently than what everyone else is? What are the trends that these folks have in common? And certain patterns tend to emerge. And, you know, it's not a humble brag like, oh, sweet, we have 8,000 customers. How sweet are we? To the contrary, it's getting to the point, you know, so many years in now where we actually have like a really, really solid data set. And some of these patterns that are emerging are just like smacking me in the face going, wow, this is even such a bigger part to growing a successful art photography business than, you know, I ever even potentially thought. And so this question, this notion of how many new customers did you acquire in last month, last year, take your period of time, is proving to just be a massive one. And it's a massive hot button issue for me. And so I want to kick this thing off with a story. Okay. It's a little morbid to start out with, but stick with me. So my good friend's dad, extremely successful in his business life. One of those crazy stories that he dropped out of college and hit it big with his first business. Guy was just an extremely intelligent and like analytical thinker. And 30 years later, he received a terrible diagnosis, stage 4 throat cancer. And he did what anyone does that has those kind of means. He immediately found the 3 best doctors on the entire face of this earth planet that treat this type of cancer, and he went to go see him. And he's such an interesting, like, analytical kind of a dude that he asked each of these doctors individually. He's like, hey, if I was stuck on a desert island and I could only do one thing, you could prescribe me one thing to help stave off and potentially survive this cancer, what would it be? And it turns out all 3 of those doctors in isolation answered the question the exact same way. All 3 of them said, exercise. And I'm happy to report today, he ended up moving to Houston, where the doctor he chose underwent treatment, beat cancer, moved home. And it's like 10 years on now, still healthy. And you know what he does 6 days a week? Yeah, you guessed it. He exercises. Now, why did I just tell you that story? If you asked me what the one metric, if you wanted to have a successful and fulfilling art business that is growing year after year, what would that be? The only one thing I could recommend, if I was your doctor in this case, that you could focus on, it would be the number of new customers you acquire per year. The number of new customers you acquire per year is the exercise to his cancer. And no different than surviving that cancer and being healthy. Obviously, you know, it's a complex question. But the problem of this whole little exercise remains the power of the one question, the one thing, right? Like, what is the one thing that you can be working on that such if you do and you solve it, the score takes care of itself? And I believe it's the number of new customers that you acquire per year. But I want to unpack that and get into the reasons why. And at the top, you know, the basics remain the basics, okay? They're the foundations upon which a successful art business is built. And I feel no shame ever rehashing them because we all need to hear them often and often and often. And I've mentioned them on this podcast before, but I'm going to mention them again because, again, we all need to hear them. It reminds me of this line, and I don't know where it came from or where I heard it or who even said it, but the line goes, or the quote, principles are many, morals are few. Principles change often, but morals never do. And it's a way that I like to think about the basics in this business, right? The basics are like morals. They're just never going to change. They are fundamentally so important to being successful as an artist or a photographer. And the first one is that any successful art photography career, okay, it's the long game. It is the long game. And I know that sounds so cliche, but once you understand that you're going to be at this for months and months and years, and in most cases, decades and decades, it really puts a fine point on this. And when you come to terms with it, you realize if your business is going to be successful and growing, it's not about a good month or some flash in the pan marketing technique or working your butt off for 2 months and then taking a break, or the revenue source that works today is just going to keep on working for you tomorrow. None of that's going to do it. It's showing up every week and putting in the work such that you're building something slow and steady. And when you talk to as many artists and photographers as I do from all age brackets, all niches, all over this country and others, you realize that just how many get this one wrong, so terribly wrong to the detriment of your business. If you just stick at it and stay consistent, the odds are you're going to win. It's going to come down to how many new customers you acquire per year, spread out over the years and decades. It's going to ultimately define the level of success that you have. That's going to be ultimately predictive of the revenue potential of your business. And so why is it so important to acquire new customers? The reason it's so important to acquire new customers is because they are the bread and butter of this business. The bread and butter of this business, and they have the potential to turn into collectors, okay? What is a collector? A collector is the force multiplier of any artist and photographer. A collector is the base salary, is the 401k, is that you get paid for just creating, right? It's someone loosely defined as someone that will purchase from you again and again and again. So again, you keep creating over the years and they just keep coming back and buying more and more and more. And it's just an incredible phenomenon of this business, right? You acquire attention, you acquire social media followers, you acquire emails, you eventually get them to purchase, you continue to market to these folks, and some portion of these new customers that you acquire will turn into collectors, and they will just keep buying and buying and buying. And really, the number of collectors that you have is the other most important metric that's determinant of what the long-term revenue potential of the business it is, right? And I could go on and on and on about this because of what I continue to learn and what I continue to see in our customer base. But if it comes down to a volume game, right? The more customers you acquire, okay, the more potential some of these folks have to turn into collectors. And you don't know who the new customers you acquire are going to turn into collectors, which ones will never buy again, which ones will keep coming back. And so that's really where the volume portion of this game is just so important, right? And it all circles and goes back to the 3 bullet point equation, right? The easiest customer to get is the one that you already have. The easiest customer to get is the one that you already have. It's a fundamental principle practice of business that far too many ignore. And if we look at the 3 ways to grow in our photography business, there's only 3, right? Acquire brand new customers, which is what everyone works on all year long. Like, how do I get new customers? How do I get new customers? Second way to grow in our photography business is to increase what we call AOV, the average order value. So what somebody does purchase, how do you get more dollars out of that transaction? Easiest way to do that is raise prices, but other ways to do that are bundle items. Oh, you're going to buy an original. How would you like to get a print at 20% off? Or how would you like to get a calendar, right? Or any kind of a merch item, so you increase your average order value that way. The third way is to get the customers you do have to come back and purchase again. That's why the easiest customer to get is the one that you already have, right? That's just a known fact, and it is even more pronounced when you consider this collector scenario, right? And it's like, oh, it sounds so obvious. Oh, Patrick, like, thanks for wasting my time in this whole podcast. Like, I know I need to be acquiring new customers, and yet, in all the years I've been working in this industry, I rarely see anyone optimize their entire business towards it. I almost never see anybody make it the only metric that matters in their business, even the really successful ones, okay? Some of our most successful customers are ignoring this metric. If I ask them right now, how many new customers did you acquire last year? Most of them have no idea. They have to do like a deep dive in their analytics to find out. And so let me start with that question then. How many new customers did you acquire last year? Can any of you answer that right away? Right? I mean, if you haven't sold anything, it's relatively easy, okay? I didn't sell anything. But if you sold 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, do you know? Most can't answer the question, most struggle with it. And obviously, we all wish it was a much larger number, but in almost all cases, the number is way too small. And it's not getting the focus that it needs, right? What's the Peter Drucker quote? What gets measured gets managed, right? And that's what we want to do. That's the whole point of this podcast, is to take this metric and sort of turn it on its head and say, okay, I get it. The more new customers I acquire, plus regular and consistent marketing, the higher propensity I have to turn those folks into collectors. It is just a volume business. And when you start to think that way and you start to break it down, you start taking the steps in your business. It starts guiding the overall strategy of your business. So let's work on a thought exercise so I can explain this. So how many customers did you acquire last year, right? It's 2023 now. So how many customers did you acquire in 2022? Let's say you acquired 70, okay? And I'm like, great work. I'm proud of you. Now let's set up a game plan for this coming year, for 2023, and let's use what is known as the 10x framework. You take your goal, you multiply it by 10x, and you set this big, hairy, audacious goal, BHAG, some people say, or if you like, the shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars way of thinking. So we're going to take those 70 customers, okay, and we're going to multiply it by 10. That's your target for this next year. So 70 times 10, 700 customers. Now let's break that down by month. That is 58 customers a month and essentially a little bit less than 2. So let's round it up to 2 customers a day. Okay, so that is how many customers we need your business acquiring this year. 2 customers a day. How are we going to do that? How are we going to achieve that? What kind of tweaks are we going to start making across our business footprint? And what marketing activities that we engage in are going to get us to a point where we're selling 2 customers? And it sounds crazy. It sounds daunting. It sounds way too lofty, but it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to sound crazy. And it's when we break this down that you start to realize a couple of things, okay? A couple of things. Yes, you know you're playing the long game. Yes, we realize that the only thing that matters is acquiring a new customer. Yes, we realize the easiest customer to get is the one that we already have. And then we're like, okay, I got to sell 2 a day. Let's just break this down into months, figure out how we're going to do this, right? And you start to realize things. You start to realize, if I'm going to acquire 2 customers per day, boy, am I going to need a range of pricing. Just did a podcast episode on this back 2 or 3 episodes ago, so go back and listen to it if you haven't already. But you need to have prices in your lineup from $0 to $100, $100 to $1,000, $1,000 plus, right? Very, very important. You realize also that you can't just be selling the originals, okay? And you can't just be selling the limited editions. It's why POD, print on demand, is so insanely powerful. With print on demand, artists, photographers of all shapes and stripes can go from having just a couple of items in their store, i.e. their originals, to having prints on all different types of media and all different sizes, right? You can instantaneously have all types of merchandise on offer as well. You can do that without coming out of pocket even a dime. All of a sudden you have this massive lineup of products that you can potentially sell. That is going to make it significantly easier for you to start acquiring 2 customers a day, right? And you realize too that 2 customers a day is a crazy high number if you're selling wall art. It just is. To take it a step further, not everybody is ready to buy wall art all the time. So you have to have non-wall art as a part of your lineup. That is where the merchandise comes in, and it gets even accentuated, this ability to acquire new customers, when you have that 0 to 100 price point, right? Like, wall art oftentimes is a commitment. It's a longer buying cycle. It's often not bought on a whim or on a lark or serendipitously. So you realize that if you're going to be acquiring 2 customers a day, yes, we have to optimize for those price points, but yes, we have to have non-wall art. Let's talk where the rules meet the data, okay? The rules that are collectors are everything. And the rules are that the easiest customer to get is the one that you already have. In the data, by which I mean our data, clearly shows that our most successful customers are the ones acquiring the most new customers, period. Some percentage of which are going to turn into collectors, and that's how you keep the business humming and growing and growing and growing, right? Now, where most people fail in this entire endeavor is not having the price points and not having non-wall art as a part of their lineup. When you have both the wall art and the merch, whatever it is, doesn't matter, at your disposal, you are in a much better position, okay, to acquire as many customers as possible. And the 700 number sounds daunting, right? It just does. But let's just break it down and let's assume You're selling stickers, a pack of stickers. And I don't even care what the merch is. I'm going to pick stickers just because. And you're selling a sticker pack for $5 a piece. Well, guess what? It's not so daunting to sell 500 of those, right? Totally possible to do that. You could probably even sell more of those. And so out of those 500 stickers sold, let's just say you did it, you crushed it, you acquired 500 new customers selling stickers, okay? Now you have information on 500 folks' email addresses that you can market to in the future. And let's just say that 30 of those people that bought the stickers ended up doing what I do and going into the garage and slapping that sticker on the garage refrigerator, right? That means that every day now, some percentage of that 500 is going to the refrigerator. Every time they're grabbing a drink, they are seeing your artwork, i.e. you are top of mind, okay? It's 2 years from when you sold the 500 stickers. And guess what? A couple of those people that threw that sticker on the refrigerator are now going to move, or they're now going to go get a vacation home. And because your sticker has been on that wall for that entire time that they've been seeing every single solitary day when they go and grab a beer, who do you think they're going to call to buy wall art? Hello, $7,500 sale. Hello, 16-piece sale, 5-piece sale, 3-piece sale. Maybe they do a couple of bathrooms with you, right? It never would have happened if you did not acquire those customers. That is how art and photography, especially the high-end ticket items, is sold in the real world. And no one ever talks about that enough. And it is why acquiring a customer is absolutely everything, right? And so when you contemplate the number of new customers you acquire per year, and then you adjust your pricing and you add in POD, all of a sudden your entire business changes. You're not just marketing wall art all the time. You're acquiring customers all over the scale in terms of price point. And guess what? You don't care where you get them. Nowhere in here did it say the only thing that matters is new customers I acquire over the $1,000 price point. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Number of new customers acquired plus regular and consistent marketing times the number of years that you're going to be at it, i.e. years and years and years and decades and decades and decades, equals the revenue potential of the business. That's it. That's it. And so what would happen this year if you made this year the year of customer acquisition? If you set a lofty goal, broke it down into months, and started figuring out how you're going to get there, how you're going to achieve it. And you look at the year already so far. It's February when I'm recording this, and you look back at January and you're like, oh man, I acquired 1 customer, 2 a day. I'm 60 behind. And then you look at those numbers and you're like, okay, what am I going to do to fix that? You know what? I'm going to do an in-person Therapy show. And I'm going to go do the in-person Therapy show, and I'm going to sell those stickers. I'm going to sell my calendars. I'm going to sell my tote bags, whatever other merchandise item you have. And I'm going to sell my wall art and my limited editions and my originals, right? You could have one show right there where you sold 60 or 70 or 80 or 90 things. And you acquired 60 or 70 or 80, 90 customers. And you're like, boom, I'm caught right back up. I'm right back at my 2 a day pace. So how many new customers did you acquire last year? Multiply it by 10, divide it by the 12 months, know what your number is per day, and get working on it. Get working on it. The minute you do, everything in your business will change. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.